Fear of the unknown is a powerful evolutionary response, Nalix acknowledged. But so is adaptation. The Alluri have always believed that knowledge overcomes instinctive reactions. The more the galaxy learns about humanity, the more they will see what we have come to recognize. And what is that, exactly? Elena asked, genuinely curious. Nalix's skin rippled with warm gold patterns, the Alluri expression of profound certainty. That perhaps the universe needs its Deathworlders. Those who evolved against the harshest conditions may be uniquely equipped to ensure that life in all its forms continues to thrive among the stars. Behind them, the station's announcement system chimed softly. The ceremony will begin in 15 minutes, Elena noted. Ready to make history, First Officer Kaveri. Nalix performed the traditional Alluri gesture of affirmation, then added the human nod she had adopted during her time among them. Indeed, Commander Reyes. Though I believe history began the moment a desperate alien SOS summoned the Deathworlder fleet, and they chose to answer. Together, the human and the Alluri turned from the viewport and walked toward the Grand Assembly Hall, where representatives from across the galaxy had gathered to witness the beginning of a new era in galactic cooperation. An era where the most feared species in the galaxy might also become its greatest defenders. Protectors forged in the crucible of a world that had taught them both the strength to survive and the wisdom to extend their hand to others in need. For the Alluri, evolution had blessed them with extraordinary minds. For humans, it had granted remarkable resilience. Together, they were discovering that perhaps the greatest evolutionary advantage of all was the ability to move beyond instinctive fear and recognize the value in their differences. As the formal alliance between humanity and the Alluri was officially recognized by the Galactic Council that day, a new understanding began to spread throughout civilized space, that sometimes, when danger threatens and hope seems lost, the best possible sound in the universe might be the arrival of ships filled with those strange contradictory beings from a world called Earth, the Deathworlders who came not to conquer, but to protect. Elorian's secondary eyelids flickered rapidly. Such an arrangement would be unprecedented. No council species has ever invoked the mutual defense provision to partner with a non-council entity. Unprecedented doesn't mean improper, Elena pointed out. The provision exists precisely for situations where standard protocols might prove insufficient. First Officer Nalix leaned forward, her skin rippling with thoughtful blue patterns. There's another consideration. The Vaxcar attacked us specifically because our research, combined with their stolen precursor technology, could create weapons of unprecedented power. By partnering with humans, we could develop defensive countermeasures instead. A shield rather than a sword, Elena said with an approving nod. Captain Elorian was silent for a long moment, his large eyes fixed on the holographic display of the Vaxcar weapons analysis. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the formal cadence of official Alluri proclamation. As commanding officer of the Luminary Envoy and designated representative of the Alluri Scientific Collective, I hereby invoke the mutual defense provision of galactic law. Section 42, Paragraph 17. I formally request the assistance and protection of humanity, represented by the United Earth Defense Force, against the unlawful aggression of the Vaxcar hegemony. Elena straightened in her chair, recognizing the historical significance of the moment. As commander of the UEDF vessel Indomitable and authorized representative of Earth's unified government, I acknowledge and accept this formal request. Humanity stands ready to assist the Alluri people in accordance with galactic law and ethical principles of mutual defense. Admiral Harrison activated a recording protocol, ensuring the exchange was officially documented. This agreement will be transmitted to both Earth's Diplomatic Corps and the Galactic Council Records Office. A formal alliance charter can be drafted immediately. As the meeting transitioned to detailed planning, Elena caught Nalix studying her with those large, reflective eyes. You appear surprised by our acceptance, First Officer, Elena observed during a brief break in the discussions. Nelix's chromatophores flushed with bands of violet. Embarrassment. Alina had learned. I had not expected such certainty from your leaders. The council would require extensive deliberation before committing to such an arrangement. Alina smiled slightly. One advantage of being evolutionary survivors is that we've learned to recognize when hesitation is more dangerous than action. This alliance serves both our interests, protecting your people and research while giving humanity an opportunity to demonstrate our value to the wider galactic community. Nelix's head tilted in the lurid gesture of thoughtful consideration. When we sent that distress call into the void, we feared that summoning Deathworlders might be exchanging one danger for another. Now I wonder if perhaps the classification system that made us fear your kind also prevented us from recognizing your potential as allies. Classifications are useful tools, Alina replied, but they can never capture the full complexity of any species, especially one as contradictory as humanity. 3 months later, First Officer Nelix Kiveri stood at the observation deck of the newly constructed Earth-Eluri Joint Research Station, watching as vessels from across the galaxy arrived for the formal dedication ceremony. The station, positioned at the border between Earth-controlled space and the territories of the Galactic Council, represented the first official cooperative venture between a council species and humanity. "Quite a view, isn't it?" came a now familiar voice. Nelix turned to find Commander Alina Rice approaching, dressed in the formal UEDF ceremonial uniform rather than her usual duty attire. Indeed, Nelix agreed, her English having improved significantly during her time working alongside humans. 7 council species delegations have already arrived, with 3 more expected before the ceremony begins. Alina moved to stand beside her at the transparent aluminum viewport. And the Vax car. The Galactic Council's investigation confirmed our evidence. Their entire leadership is facing trial for weapons proliferation violations and unauthorized use of precursor technology. The hegemony has been placed under council supervision. They stood in companionable silence, watching the elegant lines of a Trilaxian diplomatic vessel as it maneuvered toward the docking bays. The Council's official reclassification of humanity is being announced today as well, Nelix mentioned. No longer simply Class 12 Deathworlders, but recognized as Adaptive Protector Species, a new designation created specifically for Earth. Alina smiled. Progress comes in small steps, though I imagine some council species remain uneasy about closer integration with humans. Different evolutionary paths lead to different strengths, Dr. Chen observed. Your species' exceptional scientific achievements and ethical frameworks are admirable. Perhaps that's why the Vaxcar targeted your research vessel specifically. A human security officer appeared at the entrance to the medical bay. Dr. Chen, Captain Elorian, Commander Rice requests your presence in the command center immediately. There's been a significant development regarding the Vaxcar situation. As Dr. Chen helped Elorian from the medical pod, he reflected on how quickly circumstances had changed. A week ago, the idea of willingly entering a room full of Deathworlders would have been unthinkable. Now, he found himself not only accepting human assistance, but beginning to trust their intentions. Perhaps, Elorian thought, the greatest discovery of this unfortunate incident wasn't scientific at all, but the realization that the galaxy's most feared Deathworlders might also be its most unexpected protectors. A new alliance. The conference room aboard the UEDF outpost Sentinel-7 hummed with the background noise of environmental systems, calibrated to maintain a compromise atmosphere suitable for both human and Eluri physiology. Commander Alina Rice sat at one end of the oval table, flanked by her senior officers and diplomatic staff. Opposite them, Captain Elorian led the Eluri delegation, including First Officer Nelix and their chief scientists. Between them, a holographic projection displayed the analysis of the Vaxcar weapons technology and its connection to restricted precursor artifacts. The evidence is conclusive, Dr. Patel was saying, highlighting specific energy signatures in the display. The Vaxcar have not only acquired precursor technology, but have actively incorporated it into their weapon systems, a direct violation of at least 7 Galactic Council prohibitions. Elena observed the Alluri reactions. Unlike humans, their expressions were primarily conveyed through skin pigmentation and the movement of gill-like structures, subtle cues she was still learning to interpret. Nevertheless, the gravity of the situation was clearly understood by all present. This explains their determination to acquire our research, Nalix said, her normally melodic voice tight with concern. Our quantum field stabilization theories would provide the missing component they need to weaponize the precursor technology on a scale unprecedented in modern galactic history. Elena leaned forward. The question now is how we proceed. The Vaxcar know we've escaped with both the Alluri scientists and their research intact. They'll likely accelerate their plans, knowing we may alert the Galactic Council. Captain Elorian's large, multifaceted eyes reflected the holographic light as he considered the situation. The Council's response protocols for technological violations typically involve extensive deliberation and multiple verification stages. By the time they mobilize, the Vaxcar could have completed their weapons development. That's assuming the Council would act decisively even then, added Admiral Harrison, the commanding officer of Sentinel-7. Humanity's limited interactions with Council governance suggest they prioritize stability and consensus over rapid intervention. A thoughtful silence fell over the room. Elena studied the Alluri captain, sensing his internal conflict. The Council's methodical approach reflected Alluri cultural values of careful consideration and ethical deliberation. Yet in this situation, such caution could prove catastrophic. The Alluri Scientific Collective has always deferred to Council protocols, Elorian finally said. But these circumstances are unprecedented. Captain Rice, what would Earth do in this situation? Elena exchanged glances with Admiral Harrison before responding. Officially, as non-Council members, Earth would submit the evidence and allow the Council to determine the appropriate response. She paused. Unofficially, we would prepare contingency operations to address the threat if diplomatic channels moved too slowly. You would act unilaterally? Nalix asked, her chromatophores flickering with surprise. If necessary to prevent catastrophic harm, yes, Elena confirmed. Earth's history has taught us that sometimes principles must be defended through action, not just deliberation. Admiral Harrison cleared his throat. There is, perhaps, a third option, one that respects Council authority while addressing the immediate threat. All eyes turned to the Admiral. The Alluri could formally request human assistance under the mutual defense provision of galactic law. As the wronged party in a documented attack, you have the right to seek protection from any capable allied force, even non-Council species like humans. Before Nalix could respond, an alert chimed from one of the laboratory consoles. A male human scientist approached Dr. Patel with a data tablet. We've completed the preliminary analysis of the Vaxcar weapons signatures, he reported. You'll want to see this. Patel reviewed the information, her expression growing serious. First Officer Kaveri, are you familiar with precursor technology? Nalix felt her chromatophores pale involuntarily. In theoretical contexts, yes. The ancient species that predated all current galactic civilizations, their technological artifacts are extremely rare and prized for research. According to this analysis, the Vaxcar weapon systems incorporated elements of precursor energy modulation technology. Technology they shouldn't have access to under Galactic Council regulations. Nalix processed this information. That would explain their unusual interest in our quantum field research. Our work includes theories on how precursor technology manipulated subspace fields, and if combined, Patel began, it could potentially lead to weapons of unprecedented destructive capacity. Nalix finished, the implications settling heavily in her mind. Dr. Patel exchanged glances with her colleagues. Commander Reyes needs to be informed immediately. This could represent a significant threat to galactic stability. As the humans mobilized to report their findings, Nalix found herself reevaluating everything she thought she knew about these Deathworlders. Their reputation focused so heavily on their physical capabilities and evolutionary history that it overlooked something perhaps more significant: their capacity for cooperation, adaptation, and ethical consideration. The Alluri prided themselves on their intellectual achievements and ethical scientific practices. Perhaps humans, with their unique evolutionary perspective, could be valuable allies in preserving those values on a galactic scale. In the Indomitable's medical bay, Captain Elorian watched with fascination as the human medical staff treated the injured Alluri crew. The facility had been temporarily reconfigured to accommodate their biological needs, with separate sterile environments for each patient and specialized equipment brought from the Alluri vessel. "Your cellular regeneration rate is improving, Captain," announced Dr. Sarah Chen, the chief medical officer. She studied the diagnostic display hovering above Elorian's treatment pod. "The adapted regenerative compound is working as hoped." Elorian observed the human physician with scientific curiosity. Like all medical personnel aboard the human vessel, she wore a thin, transparent barrier suit when treating Alluri patients, a precaution against biological incompatibility. Even so, the fact that humans could develop effective medical treatments for an entirely different species' physiology in such a short time was remarkable. Our own medical science would have required weeks to synthesize such compounds, Elorian noted. "Your adaptation capabilities are impressive." Dr. Chen adjusted some settings on the medical pod. "Necessity drives innovation, Captain. Humans have a long history of having to rapidly adapt our medical practices to new challenges." "A product of your Deathworld evolution?" Elorian asked, then immediately regretted the potential insensitivity of the question. To his relief, Dr. Chen merely smiled. "Partly, yes. When your homeworld is constantly trying to kill you with everything from microscopic pathogens to extreme weather events, you either develop advanced medical science or you perish. But there's more to it than mere survival." She moved to check on another Alluri patient, her movements efficient but gentle. "Humans place high value on preservation of life. All life. Not just our own. It's encoded in our most fundamental ethical frameworks." Elorian considered this, "Yet your species also has a well-documented capacity for violence." "Yes," Chen acknowledged without hesitation. "We contain contradictions. The same adaptability that allows us to heal can be turned toward harm. The same protective instincts that drive us to save others can become destructive when we perceive threats to those we care about." She paused, checking another diagnostic display. "I suppose that's true of most sentient species, though perhaps the extremes are more pronounced in humans." Elorian's secondary eyelids flickered in contemplation. The Alluri evolved on a world without predators or significant environmental threats. Our development focused almost exclusively on sensory perception, information processing, and social cooperation. The concept of having to fight for survival is foreign to our experience. Most unsettling of all was the composition of the atmosphere. Humans breathed oxygen as a primary gas, a highly reactive element that would, in higher concentrations, be corrosive to Alluri respiratory tissues. The environmental systems in the sections designated for Alluri occupation had been adjusted to reduce oxygen content and increase the nitrogen and helium mixtures more suitable for their physiology, but the transitional corridors remained challenging. "Your respiratory filters functioning properly?" Lieutenant Chen asked, noting her discomfort as they passed through a human standard section. Nalix adjusted the semi-transparent membrane covering her facial gill structures. "Yes, thank you. The technology is remarkably effective." "Good. We're almost to the science labs. Dr. Patel is eager to discuss your quantum field research." They passed a group of off-duty human crew members who nodded respectfully but couldn't hide their curious glances. Nalix understood their interest. Just as humans were objects of fascination and unease to her people, the Alluri must seem equally alien to them. The difference, she was beginning to realize, was in how the humans responded to that alienness. Where most council species maintained careful distance from evolutionary others, Humans seemed almost eager to bridge the gap, their curiosity overriding their instinctive caution. "Here we are," Chen announced as they reached a sealed doorway labeled Advanced Research Laboratory 2, in both English and Galactic Standard symbols. The door slid open to reveal a spacious laboratory filled with equipment that combined recognizable Galactic Council standard technology with uniquely human innovations. 3 human scientists looked up from their workstations as Nelix entered. A dark-skinned human female approached, her head adorned with tightly coiled black filaments pulled back from her face. "First Officer Kiveri, welcome. I'm Dr. Priya Patel, Chief Science Officer." Nelix performed the traditional Alluri greeting gesture, touching her primary digits to her central respiratory membrane. "Thank you for accommodating our research needs, Dr. Patel. The equipment you've provided is most generous." "Not at all," Dr. Patel replied with a warm expression Nelix recognized as a human smile. "Your quantum field stabilization theories represent a significant advancement over our current understanding. The opportunity to collaborate with Alluri scientists is valuable to us as well." Nelix felt her secondary chromatophores flush with pleased violet, a reaction she quickly tried to suppress, aware that humans might misinterpret the color shift. "We've set up a dedicated station for you," Patel continued, gesturing toward a workstation adjusted to Alluri ergonomic requirements. "The environmental controls in this section have been calibrated for your comfort. We've also loaded the data cores recovered from your ship's damaged sections." Nelix moved to the workstation, immediately recognizing the configuration of the interface, a thoughtful adaptation of human technology to accommodate Alluri sensory processing preferences. "This is impressively considerate," she admitted, running her elongated fingers across the haptic response surface. Dr. Patel's expression shifted subtly. "We understand that our reputation among Council species is somewhat concerning. We're trying to demonstrate that humans can be good galactic neighbors." The human's directness caught Nelix off guard. Council species typically approach such sensitive topics with elaborate social preambles and contextual qualifiers. The human tendency toward straightforward communication was simultaneously refreshing and unsettling. "I must confess," Nelix responded carefully, "that my understanding of humans prior to this encounter was primarily shaped by Council xenobiological classification data." "Ah yes, the famous Deathworlder designation," Patel said with a sound that Nelix's translator rendered as mild amusement. "Class 12 Deathworld evolutionary products. Dangerous, unpredictable, and poorly socialized by galactic standards." Nelix's skin rippled with embarrassment. "The classification system is necessarily reductive. Experience clearly offers a more nuanced perspective." "Indeed it does," Patel agreed. "Though I won't deny that parts of the classification are accurate. Earth would kill most Council species within minutes. Our biology evolved under conditions that would be considered extreme by galactic standards. But the assumption that this makes us inherently aggressive or dangerous reflects a limited perspective on evolutionary adaptation." "As Deathworlders," Elena supplied with a slight smile. "Yes, the reports of your biological capabilities and evolutionary history are disconcerting to many species. Yet you called anyway." Ilorian's skin rippled with bands of soft blue, a sign of thoughtful contemplation. Necessity overcame caution. "Now I see that perhaps the Council's assessment of humanity is incomplete." Before Elena could respond, the tactical station erupted with alerts. "Vaxcar reinforcements dropping out of FTL," Park announced tensely. 2 heavy cruisers and 4 escort vessels. Elena's expression hardened. "Status of the Tau link. Engineering reports final connections complete. Tau capacity at 84%, within operational parameters. Initiate emergency translation sequence. All ships, prepare for immediate withdrawal." The view screen shifted to show the arrival of the Vaxcar reinforcements, significantly larger vessels with visibly more substantial weapons arrays. "They're charging weapons," Park reported. "Targeting solutions locked on both the Indomitable and the Alluri vessel." Shields to maximum. Countermeasures package Delta 9, Elena ordered, her voice calm despite the escalating danger. Status of translation preparations. Drive charging. Translation in 30 seconds. Elena turned back to Elorian, still on the secondary communication screen. Captain, secure your crew. The next few moments might get turbulent. The Alluri captain nodded. We're prepared, Commander. And, whatever happens, know that the Alluri will remember what humans did here today. The Vaxcar opened fire, their more powerful weapons hammering against the human vessel's shields with significantly greater force than their advance forces had managed. Shields holding at 62%, reported engineering. Minor structural damage to outer hull sections. Translation in 10 seconds. 9. 8. The Indomitable shuddered as another barrage struck its shields, the energy dissipating in brilliant cascades of light across the protective barrier. Translation in 3, 2, 1. There was a moment of disorientation as the fabric of space-time distorted around them. The stars on the viewscreen stretched into lines, and then everything shifted. When reality settled again, the Vaxcar forces had been left behind, and the human fleet, with the Alluri vessel in tow, had successfully escaped. Elena released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Status report. Translation complete, Commander, announced the navigation officer. All vessels accounted for. The tow link with the Alluri ship is stable. Damage assessment. Minor structural damage to decks 12 through 15. Automatic repair systems responding. No casualties reported. The Alluri vessel sustained moderate additional damage during the final Vaxcar assault, but main life support systems remained functional. Elena nodded. Maintain course for Sentinel-7. Lieutenant Rodriguez, open a channel to the Alluri ship. When Captain Elorian appeared on screen again, Elena could see relief evident in the alien's expression, despite her limited ability to read Alluri emotional cues. We've successfully translated to safe space, Captain, she informed him. We'll reach UEDF Outpost Sentinel-7 in approximately 48 hours at our current speed. Commander Reyes, Elorian responded, his voice carrying the musical tone characteristic of his species. I believe I speak for my entire crew when I say that the Alluri Scientific Collective owes humanity a debt of gratitude. Your intervention saved not only our lives, but generations of irreplaceable research. Elena smiled. That's what neighbors do, Captain. Help each other when it matters most. Shelter among predators. First Officer Nalix Kiveri had never imagined she would find herself aboard a human vessel, yet here she was, walking through the corridors of the UEF Indomitable beside Lieutenant James Chen. After 2 days of emergency repairs and stabilization efforts, Captain Elorian had asked her to serve as the scientific liaison between the Alluri and human crews. The experience was disorienting, to say the least. Everything about the human ship felt wrong to her evolved senses. The gravity was stronger than Alluri standard by nearly 15%, a barely noticeable difference to humans, but a constant strain on her lighter frame. The ambient temperature ran several degrees warmer than comfortable. Even the lighting spectrum was shifted toward the red end, optimized for human visual perception, but leaving the world looking slightly off-colored to her multifaceted eyes. The Vaxcar commander's crest rippled with bands of dark purple. Surprise, perhaps, the humans were familiar with galactic law. Its eyes narrowed to thin slits. This is your only warning, human. The Vaxcar hegemony does not recognize Earth authority in this or any sector. Withdraw now, or we will consider your interference an act of war. Elena allowed herself a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. I was about to extend the same courtesy to you, Commander. The Alluri have requested our assistance under the Sentient Rights Protection Clause. We intend to provide it. She nodded to Rodriguez, who cut the transmission. They're powering up weapon systems, Park announced tensely. Shields to maximum. Alert the fleet to prepare for hostile engagement. Elena turned to her XO, Commander Jackson. Status on the Eluri ship. We've established a secure channel, Jackson replied. Their captain is standing by. Put them through. The view screen changed to show the interior of the Eluri vessel. Helena had studied their species profile during the approach, but seeing them live still triggered that instinctive moment of adjustment that came with every first contact. The Eluri captain appeared almost delicate by human standards. Tall and slender with luminescent blue-violet skin that seemed to pulse with internal light. Large, multifaceted eyes dominated a face that tapered to a narrow chin. What looked like gills fluttered at the sides of his neck. "This is Captain Elorian of the research vessel Luminary Envoy," he began, his translated voice carrying a musical quality. "We are grateful for your response, Commander Reyes." Elena noted the hesitation. Not surprising. Humanity's reputation among galactic species was complex at best, terrifying at worst. "We're approaching your position, Captain. Our scans show your ship has sustained significant damage. What's your crew status?" "We have 137 researchers and support personnel aboard," Elorian replied. 22 injured, 3 critically. "We've begun evacuating our most vulnerable members to escape pods, but our life support systems are failing faster than anticipated." "The Vaxcar are mobilizing to intercept those pods," Park interjected quietly. Elena nodded acknowledgement before addressing Elorian again. "Captain, we'll deploy interceptors to protect your escape pods, but I recommend halting further launches. We'll dock with your vessel and evacuate personnel directly." Alarm flashed across the Eluri captain's features. "Commander, while we appreciate your offer, there are biological compatibility concerns. Our atmospheric requirements." "We're prepared for that," Elena interrupted smoothly. "Our ships are equipped with adaptable environmental systems, and our boarding teams have fully enclosed environmental suits. We can establish a secure transfer corridor between our vessels." Before Elorian could respond, the tactical station erupted with alerts. "The Vaxcar are firing on the Eluri escape pods," Park called out. "Intercept those missiles," Elena ordered sharply. "Deploy strike teams Alpha and Beta." Lieutenant Rodriguez informed the fleet to move to engagement positions. She turned back to the screen where Captain Elorian was receiving reports from his own crew, his expression growing increasingly distressed. "Captain, we're out of time. We're moving to protect your vessel and recover the launched pods. Prepare your crew for emergency evacuation." Elorian's large eyes fixed on her with an unreadable alien expression. "Commander Reyes, there is something you should know. Our vessel contains sensitive research data that cannot fall into Vaxcar hands. If your rescue attempt fails—" "It won't," Elena stated with absolute certainty. A series of impacts rocked the Indomitable as the Vaxcar opened fire. "Shields holding at 87%, reported the engineering officer. Elena never took her eyes off the Eluri captain. "Trust us, Captain Elorian. This isn't our first rescue operation." After a moment of silence, the alien gave what appeared to be their species equivalent of a nod. "Very well, Commander. We place ourselves in your hands." As the transmission ended, the bridge erupted into coordinated activity. Elena returned to the tactical display, watching as the human fleet moved into defensive positions. "Target Vaxcar weapon systems only," she commanded. "Disable. Don't destroy unless absolutely necessary." "They're not showing similar restraint," Park noted as another barrage struck their shields. "We're not them," Elena replied simply. "Status on those escape pods. Strike Team Alpha has reached them. They're deploying defense drones and preparing for recovery operations." Before she could elaborate, a tremendous crash echoed from a nearby intersection, followed by a high-pitched whine that the Eluri recognized as Vaxcar energy weapons. Elorian instinctively moved to shield his medical officer, but a human security detail was already moving to intercept, their movements quick and decisive. "Stay back," ordered one of the humans, the translation device on their environmental suit rendering their words in galactic standard. "Hostile contact ahead." Through the haze of emergency lighting and smoke, Ilorian caught his first glimpse of Vaxcar boarding troops. They were imposing figures, each standing nearly 2 meters tall with heavy natural armor plating across their torsos and formidable claws extending from their upper limbs. Their faces were hidden behind battle masks, but the distinctive crest patterns visible at the backs of their heads identified them as elite shock troops. The human security team didn't hesitate. They'd moved with a coordinated precision that spoke of extensive combat training, taking positions at the intersection and deploying some kind of portable barrier technology that expanded to create defensive positions. What followed was unlike any combat Ilorian had ever witnessed, even in historical archives. The humans fought with an intensity that bordered on the incomprehensible to Illyri sensibilities. They showed no signs of fear or hesitation against opponents that outweighed and outmatched them in natural armor and strength. Instead, the humans relied on their technology, teamwork, and most disturbingly, a willingness to sustain injuries that would incapacitate most species. One human, struck by a glancing Vaxcar energy blast, merely shifted position and continued returning fire, despite what must have been excruciating pain. Most shocking of all was when the humans switched from ranged weapons to close-quarters combat. The Vaxcar, natural-born predators with evolved killing adaptations, should have had every advantage. Instead, the humans fought with an adaptability that defied evolutionary logic. They used the environment, improvised weapons, and tactics that seemed to anticipate the Vaxcar's natural fighting style. "We should continue to the secure area," Nelix urged, tearing Ilorian's attention from the battle. "The medical bay is prepared to receive you." Ilorian allowed himself to be led away, but the image of humans engaging the Vaxcar stayed with him. The Deathworlders were everything the cautionary briefings had suggested, and somehow more. Aboard the UEF Indomitable, Commander Elena Reyes monitored the battle from the command center, her attention divided between the space engagement outside and the boarding action aboard the Illyri vessel. "Vaxcar reinforcements have accelerated," reported Lieutenant Park. "New ETA, 15 minutes. Elena studied the tactical display. Status of the Tau link. Engineering reports 90% completion. The Illyri drive systems are more damaged than initially assessed. We've had to modify our approach." Elena nodded. "And evacuation protocols?" "Steady progress. We've secured 53 Illyri aboard our ships, including their most severely injured. The remaining crew is being consolidated in the intact sections of their vessel for the Tau operation." "Commander," Lieutenant Rodriguez interjected, "we're receiving a priority communication from the Vaxcar command ship." "Put it through," Elena ordered, straightening her uniform. The view screen activated to reveal the Vaxcar commander, its crest now fully extended in vibrant patterns of red and orange, a clear sign of rage in their species. "Human," it began without preamble, "you have directly attacked Vaxcar military personnel. This is an act of war against the hegemony." Elena kept her expression neutral. "Your forces boarded a civilian research vessel under our protection after being warned to withdraw. We responded with appropriate defensive measures." The Vaxcar commander's eyes narrowed to slits. "The Illyri possess technology that rightfully belongs to the hegemony. Their research was conducted using data stolen from our scientific archives. An interesting claim, and almost certainly false based on the intelligence briefings Elena had received. The Illyri were renowned for their ethical research practices. That's a matter for diplomatic and legal channels," Elena replied calmly. "Not military seizure in neutral space. I suggest you withdraw your forces now. My orders are to ensure the safety of the Illyri vessel and crew, which I intend to do by any means necessary." The tactical display updated, showing the small, agile human interceptors positioning themselves between the vulnerable Illyri escape pods and the Vaxcar vessels. Even as she watched, the first of the UEDF support ships dropped out of FTL, immediately moving to reinforce their position. "Commander," Jackson said quietly, moving to stand beside her, "the Vaxcar are calling for reinforcements. Long-range sensors detect 2 heavy cruisers on approach." Elena considered this development. Time estimate: 30 minutes minimum. Then we have 30 minutes to evacuate the Eluri and get out of here. She raised her voice to address the bridge crew. I need options for accelerating evacuation procedures. Lieutenant Park looked up from his station. Commander, what if we don't evacuate them to our ships at all? Elena raised an eyebrow. Explain. The Eluri vessel's engines are damaged, but the structural integrity of the main research sections remains largely intact. If we could provide them with a TOW capability. He trailed off significantly. Understanding dawned immediately. We take their ship with us. Elena finished. Lieutenant Rodriguez, contact Captain Elorian again. Lieutenant Park, work with engineering to determine the feasibility of establishing a TOW link with the Eluri vessel. The Vaxcar won't allow that without a fight, Jackson warned. Elena's expression hardened as she watched another volley of Vaxcar weaponry streak toward them. Then I suggest we give them one they won't forget. Aboard the Luminary Envoy, First Officer Nelix Kiveri was coordinating emergency preparations when the first human boarding team arrived. Despite her scientific background and commitment to rational thought, she couldn't suppress a momentary flinch when the airlock cycled open to reveal the environmental suits of the human rescue team. They were imposing. The suits added bulk to frames already significantly larger and denser than Eluri physiology, making the humans appear like armored giants. Each suit featured an opaque helmet with external lighting that cast eerie shadows in the dimmed emergency lighting of the Eluri ship. The lead human stepped forward, raising a gloved hand in what Nelix recognized from her hasty research as a non-threatening gesture. The suit's external speaker activated. Lieutenant James Chen, United Earth Defense Force. We're here to help. Nelix forced her respiratory membranes to calm their fluttering. First Officer Nelix Kiveri. She responded with a formal greeting gesture. We appreciate your assistance, Lieutenant. The human turned his helmet, seemingly taking in the corridor of aliens watching with a mixture of fear and fascination. We need to move quickly. Commander Rise is establishing a TOW link with your vessel. We'll be escorting you to secure sections and preparing emergency protocols in case we need to abandon ship. Before Nelix could respond, the ship lurched violently, throwing several Eluri against the walls. The humans, she noted with scientific interest, merely adjusted their stance, their suits' gravitational stabilizers, and their natural high-gravity adaptations working in concert to keep them upright. What was that? She asked, steadying herself against a bulkhead. Another human checked a device on their wrist. Vaxcar boarding attempt on your lower research decks. Our defense teams are engaging them now. Nelix felt her chromatophores pale to ashen gray. The Vaxcar are on board. Lieutenant Chen's helmet turned toward her, the reflective visor revealing nothing of the face beneath. Not for long, he stated with a calm certainty that Nelix found simultaneously reassuring and disturbing. The first real firefight between humans and Vaxcar was about to begin aboard her ship, and Nelix realized that no amount of xenobiological research could have prepared her for the reality of these Deathworlders in action. The counterattack. Captain Elorian limped through the damaged corridors of the Luminary Envoy, supported by his chief medical officer. Around them, the combined efforts of human rescue teams and Eluri crew created an organized chaos of evacuation procedures and damage control operations. The ship shuddered periodically as the human vessels outside engaged the Vaxcar attackers. The TOW link is nearly established. First Officer Nelix reported, falling into step beside him. The humans estimate we'll be ready for emergency translation within 20 minutes. Elorian nodded, wincing as pain lanced through his injured side. And the Vaxcar boarding parties. Nelix's skin rippled with bands of yellow, the Eluri expression of uncertainty. The humans are handling them. You've observed their defensive operations? Elorian asked, noting her discomfort. Yes, Captain. She hesitated. It's Not what I expected. The Vaxcar's crest rippled with patterns of deep purple and black. You underestimate the significance of your interference, human. The hegemony will not forget this transgression. Our reinforcements approach. You are outnumbered and will soon be outgunned. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Perhaps, but I don't think you've had much experience fighting humans, have you, Commander? Without waiting for a response, she nodded to Rodriguez to cut the transmission. They're moving to surround us, Park announced. All 3 vessels are coordinating their attack vectors. Elena turned to her XO. Time to show them why picking a fight with Deathworlders is a bad idea. Deploy countermeasures package Echo 7. Signal the fleet to execute maneuver thesis. Commander Jackson raised an eyebrow. That's an aggressive response. They've made it clear they're not backing down, Elena replied. We need to buy time for the evacuation and Tau operation. Sometimes the best defense is a decisive offense. Jackson nodded and began relaying the orders. Elena returned her attention to the tactical display, watching as her ships moved into the complex formation that would initiate maneuver thesis, a combat doctrine specifically designed to counter numerically superior forces by creating the illusion of vulnerability while setting up a devastating counterattack. The human fleet appeared to fragment, individual vessels seemingly breaking formation in disarray. To an observer unfamiliar with human battle tactics, it would look like confusion or retreat. The Vaxcar are taking the bait, Park reported with professional satisfaction. They're adjusting course to pursue our retreating vessels. Countermeasures ready, announced the weapons officer. Elena watched the Vaxcar ships accelerate toward what they perceived as easy targets. Deploy on my mark. Now, throughout the battlefield, dozens of small objects detached from the human vessels, their minimal profiles barely registering on sensors. The autonomous drone weapons, a technology humanity had perfected during their own turbulent history, moved into position. Drones in position. Target lock confirmed. Execute, Elena commanded. The drones activated simultaneously, unleashing a coordinated barrage against the Vaxcar ship's propulsion and weapons systems. Meanwhile, the human fleet's retreat transformed instantly into a precisely choreographed pincer movement that caught the Vaxcar vessels in a crossfire. Direct hits on all 3 vessels, Park reported. Their shield generators are fluctuating. Weapons systems on the lead ship are offline. Elena nodded with grim satisfaction. Status of our boarding teams. Final sweeps in progress. They've neutralized all Vaxcar boarding parties and secured the Alluri research databases. Excellent. Elena turned to the navigation officer. As soon as the Tau link is established, prepare for immediate withdrawal. Plot a course that will take us to the nearest UEDF outpost. The bridge fell into the focused rhythm of combat operations, each crew member executing their role with the efficiency that had become the hallmark of human military forces. Elena watched the tactical display, noting with approval that the Vaxcar ships were now on the defensive, struggling to maintain position as the human fleet systematically disabled their offensive capabilities without destroying the vessels. It was a demonstration of restraint as much as strength, a message the Vaxcar would hopefully understand. Humans could have destroyed their ships entirely but chose not to. It wasn't mercy so much as calculated diplomacy. The Vaxcar hegemony would be less likely to pursue immediate retaliation if they didn't suffer catastrophic losses. Commander, Rodriguez called out. Incoming communication from the Alluri vessel. Put it through. Captain Elorian appeared on screen, looking notably more composed despite his evident injuries. Commander Rice, the human security teams have informed me that all Vaxcar boarding parties have been neutralized. Your people fought. Remarkably. Elena noted the mixture of awe and unease in the alien captain's voice. It was a common reaction from species encountering human combat capabilities for the first time. My teams were just doing their job, Captain. What matters is that your crew and research are secure. We've almost completed the Tau link connections. Once established, We'll move immediately to UEDF Outpost Sentinel-7, where we can provide proper medical care for your injured and arrange for diplomatic contact with your government. Ilorian's large eyes studied her for a moment. Commander, I must express my species' gratitude. When we sent that distress call, he hesitated. I had concerns about summoning humans, based on the Council's classification of your species. Zev straightened suddenly at his station. Captain, we're receiving a response to our distress call. A new tension filled the bridge. Not the resignation of anticipated defeat, but the uncertain anticipation of the unknown. On screen, ordered Ilorian, straightening despite his injury. The view screen flickered, replacing the image of the Vaxcar ships with something entirely different. The bridge crew stared in collective shock at the being that appeared before them. It stood upright on two limbs, its body covered in some form of segmented protective garment. Its exposed head displayed a disorienting lack of sensory appendages, just two forward-facing visual organs and a small projection that presumably housed olfactory receptors. Most unsettling was the covering of keratinous filaments on the top of its head, an evolutionary feature that made no sense to Illyri sensibilities. But it was the creature's exposed skin that truly confirmed its identity, the characteristic pinkish-beige coloration that no evolved species would display. Such a hue offered no camouflage, no warning to predators, no environmental protection. This is Commander Elena Reyes of the United Earth Defense Force vessel Indomitable, the human announced in accented but recognizable galactic standard. We have received your distress call and are en route to your position with a response fleet. Please maintain your current communication channel. Assistance is incoming. Estimated arrival time, 17 minutes. 17 minutes. The Illyri measurement would be approximately 1/5 of a cycle. Impossibly fast given the distance. Before anyone could respond, the human continued, her facial features arranging into what cultural data suggested was an expression of reassurance. Hold on, Luminary Envoy. The cavalry is coming. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence before the viewscreen automatically returned to displaying the Vaxcar vessels. What? Navigator Thela finally asked. Is it cavalry? Nobody had an answer. But for the first time since the attack began, something new flickered across the faces of the Illyri crew. Hope. First contact under fire. Commander Elena Reyes stood on the bridge of the UEF Indomitable, studying the tactical projection hovering in the center of the command deck. The holographic display showed the disabled alien research vessel, the Luminary Envoy, surrounded by 3 predatory-looking ships arranged in a triangular formation. Magnify Sector 3, she ordered. The projection zoomed in on the Illyri ship, revealing scorched hull plating and several breaches that pulsed with the blue glow of emergency containment fields. Assessment, Lieutenant Park. The tactical officer frowned, his fingers dancing across his console. The Illyri vessel has taken significant damage, Commander. Their shield generators are on the verge of collapse. Life support appears to be functioning, but at minimal capacity. As for the hostiles, he manipulated the display to highlight the 3 aggressive ships. Vaxcar design, based on our intelligence database, Hunter-class cruisers, heavily armed and designed specifically for boarding actions and asset seizure. Elena's mouth tightened into a thin line. Time to intercept. 7 minutes, Commander, replied Navigator Chen from her station. The rest of the response fleet is 2 minutes behind us. Communications, hail the Vaxcar vessels. Lieutenant Rodriguez nodded. Channel open, Commander. Elena squared her shoulders, facing the main view screen as it flickered to life. The being that appeared possessed a vaguely reptilian appearance, scaled skin in mottled gray-green patterns, vertical slit pupils in yellow eyes, and a prominent crest along its skull that flared with vibrant red and orange patterns as it registered the human face before it. This is Commander Elena Reyes of the United Earth Defense Force vessel Indomitable. You are engaged in unprovoked hostilities against a civilian research vessel in neutral space. Power down your weapons and withdraw immediately. The Vax-Car commander's crest expanded further, its colors intensifying. A dominance display, according to the xenobiology briefings. Human vessel. The alien responded, its voice translated through the ship's systems with a metallic undertone. This matter does not concern your kind. The Illuri ship violated Vax-Car territorial claims. We are exercising our right of seizure under our sovereign laws. Elena kept her expression neutral despite the obvious lie. The long-range scans had already confirmed they were well within recognized neutral space. Our records indicate this is unclaimed territory under the Galactic Neutral Zone Treaty, she responded evenly. Furthermore, unprovoked attacks on scientific vessels are prohibited under Interstellar Accord Section 42, which I understand the Vax-Car hegemony signed 70 years ago. A collective intake of breath swept through the bridge. Even Nelix, whose scientific curiosity typically overrode cultural apprehension, felt her skin prickle with instinctive caution. Humans, Captain Elorian said softly. You propose we summon humans to our aid. No one spoke. The humans were a subject of intense fascination and unease throughout civilized space. Their homeworld, a Class 12 Deathworld by Galactic Council standards, should have been impossible to evolve sentient life. Yet somehow, these bizarre beings had not merely survived, but thrived in conditions that would kill most species within moments. High gravity, extreme temperature variations, toxic oxygen atmosphere, dangerous radiation levels from their star, and omnipresent microbiological threats. Earth was a nightmare by any reasonable standard. And the humans themselves, evolutionary anomalies. They possessed redundant organs, a skeleton made of impact-resistant calcium deposits, rather than proper cartilage, and a cardiovascular system that could accelerate to process impossible amounts of oxygen in crisis situations. Their digestive systems could detoxify substances that would be considered chemical weapons by Council definition. Most disturbing of all, they could continue functioning despite injuries that would incapacitate any civilized being, reportedly even able to survive partial dismemberment if their bizarre blood was prevented from escaping their bodies. They are not signatories to any Council agreements, Malus pointed out. We have no guarantee they would honor our surrender if they responded. The cultural risk assessment files classify them as unpredictably aggressive when threatened. I have reviewed the xenanthropological studies, Zev countered. Humans also display strong protective instincts toward perceived vulnerable entities. They have a cultural concept called rescue that appears to override rational self-preservation. Another impact rocked the ship, this one strong enough to dislodge ceiling panels near the auxiliary stations. Shields at 14%, reported Malus grimly. The Vax-Car are intensifying their attack. They know we're weakening. Captain Elorian closed all four of his eyes briefly, an lurid gesture of deep contemplation. When he opened them, he had visibly composed himself. Send the distress call, he ordered. All frequencies, all languages in our database. Include our coordinates and the nature of our situation. After a pause, he added, make it clear that we are a scientific vessel and that our attackers intend to acquire weapons technology. Zev's fingers flew across his console. Composing message now, Captain. If humans respond, Nelix asked quietly, how should we proceed? Elorian looked at each bridge officer in turn, his gaze settling finally on the view screen where the Vax-Car cruisers loomed ever closer. We will follow first contact protocols as best we can under the circumstances. We will be honest, diplomatic, and he hesitated, hopeful that the Council's assessment of their protective instincts is accurate. Zev looked up from his console. Message prepared, Captain. Broadcasting on all frequencies. Send it, Elorian commanded. The bridge fell silent as the distress call beamed out into the void, carrying with it their desperate plea across the stars. The Illuri were not a religious species. Their evolution had never required the comfort of unseen protectors. But in that moment, Many found themselves wishing for intervention from something greater than themselves. On her console, Nalix began compiling everything they knew about humans from the sparse council records. The information did little to reassure her. These Deathworlders breathed oxygen as a primary gas, required liquid water for survival, and consumed organic matter for sustenance, including the flesh of other living beings. Their body temperature would feel scorching to Alluri touch. Their muscles, evolved under crushing gravity, could exert force sufficient to break Alluri bones with minimal effort. Yet the final notation in the cultural database gave her pause. Humans appear to define themselves not by their considerable biological advantages, but by their social and ethical choices. They possess a complex concept they translate as humanity, which paradoxically refers not to their species designation but to their capacity for compassion. This cognitive dissonance remains a subject of ongoing xenopsychological study. First Officer, Malus called out, interrupting Nalix's reading. I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the third planet in this system. Something is moving toward our position at. This can't be correct. What is it? Elorian demanded. The readings suggest multiple vessels accelerating at speeds that would crush any council species. The gravitational compensation technology required would be. She trailed off, her chromatophores flashing with disbelief. The distress signal. First Officer Nalix Kiveri slid her elongated fingers across the sensory panel, trying to coax more power from the failing systems of the luminary envoy. The research vessel shuddered beneath her touch, another impact rattling its already compromised structural integrity. Around her, the bridge crew of Alluri scientists worked frantically, their large iridescent eyes reflecting the emergency lighting that bathed the command center in crimson. Stabilization thrusters at 26% capacity, called out Navigator Thela, her voice carrying the melodic inflection typical of their species, though now tinged with unmistakable fear. We cannot maintain orbital position for more than 7 cycles. Nalix's secondary respiratory membranes fluttered in agitation. 7 cycles, barely enough time to evacuate the most critical research data, let alone formulate an escape plan. She looked toward the main view screen where 3 predatory vessels hung against the backdrop of stars, their angular silhouettes instantly recognizable as Vaxcar Hunter-class cruisers. Any response from the Galactic Council? She asked, already knowing the answer. Communications specialist Zev let out a low, despondent harmonic. None, First Officer. The Council's nearest peacekeeping force is 17 light jumps away. Even with priority clearance, they would not arrive for at least 40 cycles. The ship rocked again. More warning signals illuminated across Nalix's console. Hull breach on Research Deck 4, announced Security Chief Malus, her facial chromatophores paling to a ghostly blue. Emergency containment fields are holding, but we've lost all specimens in cryogenic storage. Captain Elorian entered the bridge, his movements betraying the injury to his left side. A dark viscous fluid seeped through his ceremonial science robes, leaving iridescent droplets on the deck plating. Status report, he demanded, lowering himself gingerly into the command chair. Critical, Captain, Nalix responded, mandated honesty overriding the urge to soften the truth. The Vaxcar have disabled our primary drive systems and weapons. Life support is functioning at minimal capacity. They appear to be waiting for our shields to fail entirely before boarding. Elorian's brow ridges contracted. Their interest is obvious. Our quantum field research would advance their military capabilities by generations. We cannot allow them to access our data cores. The purge sequence is prepared, Nalix assured him. But the crew? How many escape pods remain functional? Elorian interrupted. Malus consulted her console. 7, Captain. Enough for perhaps half our complement. Elorian's expression didn't change, but his secondary eyelids flickered rapidly, a sign of intense distress among the Alluri. Begin evacuation protocols for essential personnel. Priority to the youngest researchers and those carrying genetic lineage memories. And the rest of us? Navigator Thela asked, voice barely audible. Captain Elorian straightened in his chair despite his obvious pain. We will remain to ensure the data purge completes. The Vaxcar must not acquire our research. Silence fell across the bridge, broken only by the persistent alarm tones and the ship's groaning superstructure. The Alluri were not warriors. Their species had evolved as peaceful knowledge gatherers on a world without predators. Their natural gifts lay in observation, analysis, and memory retention, not combat or survival against aggressors. Captain, Zev spoke hesitantly, there is another option we have not considered. All eyes turned to the communications specialist, whose skin had flushed a deep violet. The Alluri indication of extreme discomfort or social trepidation. We could send a distress call on all frequencies, not just to Council forces. Nelix immediately understood the implications. You suggest we call for help from anyone, including non-Council species, Zev confirmed, the violet deepening across his narrow shoulders. Captain Elorian's expression hardened. That would violate Regulation 472B. The Council strictly prohibits technological or scientific exchange with non-vetted species. With respect, Captain, Nelix interjected, I believe Regulation 472B contains emergency provisions. In cases of imminent loss of life, limited contact is permitted if no Council assistance is available. Elorian stared at her, then at the view screen where the Vaxcar ships had begun to move into a triangulation formation, a classic boarding preparation pattern. The nearest non-Council world? He asked after a moment. Zev consulted his instruments. There is a recently spacefaring species in the neighboring sector. They established their first extrasolar colony approximately 23 cycles ago. Their homeworld is designated as Earth.